Thank you for joining us today to learn more about physical activity for infants. Be Active Kids would like to welcome our guest speaker, Claire Heffron from the Inspired Treehouse. We have a great presentation scheduled today and a lot of people are on the webinar, so please mute their phones and computers if you have not done so already. If you need to make a comment or ask a question, please do so in the chat box. Please know that in order to receive credit for attending the webinar, you will need to complete both polls, the follow-up survey, and remain attentive throughout the webinar. Now, please welcome Claire Heffron.
Hello, and thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today to talk about one of my very favorite topics, which is fun and really playful ways to promote healthy physical development in babies. And this is actually really great timing for me to be recording this presentation myself because I am right smack in the middle of watching all of these awesome developmental milestones and engaging in all of these same activities myself with my youngest son, who is 11 months old today. So all this stuff is very fresh in my mind, and I really love sharing it with other people. So I'm excited to get started. And we can go ahead to the first slide. So I'll tell you a little bit more about who I am. My name is Claire Heffron. I am an occupational therapist, and my partner and I, Lauren Dromiak, and I are the creators of the Inspired Treehouse. We are both practicing pediatric occupational and physical therapists. I have my Master of Science in Occupational Therapy from the University of North Carolina, and I've been practicing in school settings for the last 10 years. Lauren is a physical therapy, graduated from Youngstown State, and she has been practicing for more than 15 years. She's worked in both clinical settings, more medical-based settings, and also school-based settings. And as I said, we're the co-founders of the Inspired Treehouse, which is theinspiredtreehouse.com. And we offer free information, activities, tips, and strategies to help readers conquer common developmental issues that come up for kids. So our site is founded on the belief that the more parents, teachers, and caregivers know about child development and wellness, the better off all kids are. So at our site, you'll find lots of great ideas, mostly free things that you can do at home or in the classroom with young kids all the way up to high school kids, along with a lot of great information and resources. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. Okay, so first and foremost, does physical activity really matter for babies? We hear a lot of talk about physical activity for grown-ups, right? We need to work out more, we need to exercise more, but do babies really need to have that kind of physical activity too? And the answer obviously is yes, or we wouldn't be here today, because stimulation equals development. And we see this in every aspect of development, from language to cognition to motor skills and more. And that's what we'll be talking about here today, how physical activity and stimulation contribute to the way babies learn to move and work their bodies from head to toe. So the research says that when babies are stimulated, they reach developmental milestones earlier and become more independent. So they're more coordinated and more confident. They can move their bodies with ease. When we give babies lots of opportunities to move, whether that's simply lying them on the floor or actually engaging in more structured activities with them, we see that they develop motor skills at a faster rate than babies who are not given those same opportunities. While there are babies who have developmental delays that are caused by other medical conditions and diagnoses, for the most part, for most typically developing children, providing these opportunities for structured and unstructured movement play is what leads to strong, coordinated little bodies that can move and navigate and play and do all those things that they need to do for healthy development. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. So, what do babies need to do to achieve typical motor development? They need to go through several rites of passage, which we know as motor milestones. And the examples are right here on this slide. In that first year of life, we see babies learning how to reach, learning how to roll, sit, crawl, stand, and then eventually walk. And the way that all these milestones are achieved is through lots and lots of movement play and exploration. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. So quickly I wanted to touch on, this slide is about primitive reflexes. And Mother Nature has equipped newborn babies with several innate movement patterns that they demonstrate in response to a stimulus. So when we move their bodies in a certain way, they respond with a certain movement pattern. These movements are called primitive reflexes, and they are protective responses designed to help the baby protect their own body. In the first year of life, all of these pre-programmed ways of moving will begin to fade away, or we say they integrate. And as they integrate, the babies gain more purposeful control over their movements. So when all of these reflexes start going away or integrating properly, we see kids who are able to use their hands together in a coordinated way. They can maintain their balance in different positions. They can crawl in a coordinated pattern. They can roll. Now, when those reflexes are not integrated properly, and we do see this quite a lot as school age and preschool therapists, when those reflexes are not integrated properly and children continue on in those pre-programmed movement patterns, we see a lot of motor issues. And those issues can include difficulty with posture, even difficulty with attention, problems with handwriting, reading, strength, balance, and more. And kids tend to naturally grow out of these movement patterns, these primitive reflexes, when they're given lots of opportunities for movement and free play as babies. So I wanted to touch on that as one of the reasons that we want to make sure that babies have a lot of room to move and explore. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. And we'll talk a little bit about the sensory systems. So everybody probably knows about the 5 senses: hearing, sight, touch, smell, and taste. But there are 2 other sensory systems that are really important to know about when it comes to talking about babies and movement. And these 2 systems are the vestibular system and the proprioceptive system. So our vestibular system has to do with balance and movement, and it is centered in the inner ear. Each of us has vestibular organs that are located deep inside our ears, so that when we move our heads, the fluid in these organs moves and shifts, and that provides us with the information about the position of our heads and bodies in space. This is how we can keep our balance, how we have confidence that we can maintain an upright position without falling. It allows us to move smoothly and efficiently. The vestibular system is very important. It works right alongside all of our other sensory systems. So it helps us use our eyes effectively, and it also helps process sounds in our environment. And stimulating the vestibular system involves lots of movement and transitions in and out of different positions. So that's being upright, being upside down, swaying, swinging, leaning, sliding, rocking. All of these are great vestibular experiences, and they all happen to be great for babies too. We'll get to that. The proprioceptive system refers to the way joints and muscles send messages to our brain to help coordinate our movements. This sense allows us to grade the force and direction of our movements. And while the vestibular system tells the brain about balance and position of the head in space, the proprioceptive system helps us coordinate the movement of our arms and legs in an efficient manner. So proprioceptive sensory experiences include activities where you're either working against resistance, like pushing or pulling, or providing impact to the joints and muscles of the body. So that's like jumping and stomping, drumming. Kids love to jump and crash and roll. All those things are great proprioceptive experiences where you're getting that input to the whole body. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. So ideally, babies should have exposure to play and exploration in a variety of different positions, beginning from that first time they come home from the hospital. Play and movement in different positions helps to build strength and coordination. It helps integrate those reflexes that we talked about and provides important input to those sensory systems we just talked about. One of the most commonly talked about play experiences for babies is tummy time. So there are lots and lots of benefits to having babies spend time on their tummies. First, they get practice with and develop eye-hand coordination as they look at and reach for desired toys and objects. Allowing babies to play on their tummies also gives them a chance to push up on their hands and arms. This is great strengthening for the upper body and hands. This comes into play also as babies get older and start grasping objects, and even into preschool when they're learning to grasp a pencil and scissors and all of that. It's all good strengthening that starts here in tummy time. Then babies start to scoot and creep forward on their tummies, and eventually they begin crawling. And as I said, again, bearing weight on their hands and arms is that foundation for later development of fine motor skills. Tummy time is an important motor experience that helps babies begin to grow out of those reflexes, and it helps give way to more purposeful, controlled movements of the body. And last of all, tummy time is just a great sensory experience. So they're getting all kinds of input when they're in this position. They get tactile input on their hands and trunks and legs. They're getting that proprioceptive information too all over their bodies, that vestibular and movement information. So it really helps give information to babies' brains about how and where their bodies are moving in space. Okay, and we can go on to rolling and sitting. Babies learn to roll as a means of getting from one place to another. So they might roll from their tummy to their back as early as 2 months, usually by 5 months. Being able to roll requires a lot of core strength, and we talk a lot about core strength at the Inspired Treehouse as being such an important foundation skill for kids, and one of the skills that we probably see as being the most lacking in the kids we see in the school-age population. So this starts as young as babies as they're learning how to roll. After they have rolling down pat, you might notice babies rocking their legs back and forth or reaching as far as they can over their bodies until they can roll back from their back to their tummy. And this usually happens between 5 and 7 months. So besides mobility, rolling also works on some less obvious developmental skills. One big benefit is getting both sides of the body to work together, and we call this bilateral coordination. It's a skill that's very important for crawling and walking and lots of other skills as kids get older, including handwriting, reading, independent dressing, even clothing fasteners, and higher level gross motor skills like skipping. Rolling also plays a big part in continuing to strengthen the neck, back, core, and arm muscles so that eventually baby can move on to other exciting tricks like crawling and sitting up. Speaking of sitting up, we'll move on and talk about this next most important milestone for babies. And actually, sorry, we're back one, still on that rolling and sitting slide. But generally, babies are able to sit up unsupported between 4 and 7 months. First, they have to gain that neck, head, and core strength to be able to hold themselves up against gravity. And gradually, baby's head will become more steady and upright on their shoulders. And she'll sway back and forth a little bit less, and she'll be able to maintain that position for longer periods of time. Babies also learn another important lesson around this time, and that is how to get out of sitting. So usually it's not very graceful at first, but they get a little better at it with practice. And we say a good rule of thumb for babies learning how to sit up is to start supporting them in a sitting position when they show signs of being able to get into that position themselves. Once baby is sitting up, you'll notice that they'll begin to explore other positions too, like pivoting to the side to grab a toy. Sometimes they fold in half like a little baby yogi by reaching way forward to eat their toes. And they become more comfortable and confident in this sitting position, and then they're on a mission to move. And eventually they'll move on to all fours and steadily progress toward crawling. And now we're ready to go on to crawling. Once they can roll and sit up on their own, babies realize that they have potential to get from point A to point B. And this opens up a whole new world to them as they begin to creep along on their tummies, scoot forward using one leg to propel themselves, and even put several different movements together, kind of gradually inching their way across the floor. And this is when you set baby down on their little play blanket, look away for 1 second, and you turn back, and suddenly they're in a different position, and you're like, you don't even know how they did that. So finally, all of these little awkward, squirmy movements will come together and give way to coordinated crawling. And this usually happens between 6 and 9 months. When little ones learn to crawl, they are so excited with their new independence, and they will get into everything. And this is when babies are rapidly developing even more advanced bilateral coordination skills. So they're using that back and forth reciprocal motion where the arms and legs have that back and forth, side to side pattern. Crawling also gives that great opportunity for weight bearing on their hands and arms, which is really good for strengthening. And just when you think you've finally gotten the hang of keeping up with the crawling baby, they learn how to walk. And that is what we're looking at here with my little guy right now. So he's just starting to stand on his own and take a couple steps while he's holding on. Usually babies learn to walk between 8 and 17 months. And if that sounds like a pretty wide range of what's normal, that's because it totally is. All babies achieve this important milestone at their own pace. And because this is so exciting for most parents and caregivers, we tend to hear a lot of parents comparing their baby to their friends or even to the baby's siblings and expressing concern over whether this milestone is ever going to happen. It's just important to kind of lay back and watch them develop on their own terms, and as long as they're generally within this spectrum of that 8 and 17-month markers, they are on target and they will do just fine. So babies start by pulling up to stand while holding onto furniture or their cribs, anywhere between 8 and 12 months. And right around this time, they also learn how to transition between that supported standing and going back down to sit on their bottoms. And a lot of time there's some lag time here where the baby will pull up and hold on, and then they're stuck and they're not able to lower back down to the floor. This usually results in a very cranky baby and sometimes even some crashes as they let go and see what that's like. But don't worry, this does not last that long usually. And before you know it, little ones move on to cruising or furniture walking and experimenting even with standing unsupported, showing off their balance and reciprocal bilateral movements. Finally, they're ready to take those first unsupported steps on their own, and get ready because there are bound to be lots of falls and bumps along the way. So we can go on to our next slide. Now that we know what motor skills we can expect from babies in the first year of life, we can go on to talk about all the fun and play activities we can do to support them in getting there. This is the fun part. There are so many fun and creative ways to play and engage with babies that can help to ensure that they reach all of these motor milestones on time. Today we're going to talk about gross motor activities, fine motor activities, and sensory activities for babies. Above all, I just want to mention this before we get into these slides, and then we'll come back around and talk about it again at the end of the presentation. But the single most important play experience you can offer to babies with regard to motor development is free play and room to explore, of course with some supervision. But that is our soapbox at the Inspired Treehouse for kids of all ages, just to be able to make sure that they have a lot of free reign to explore their environment and move and jump and skip and all those things that they need to do. And this starts even as young as this first year of life. So I'll just say ahead of time that all of the activities we'll discuss here are meant to be done with very close supervision at all times. So you never want to set baby up and then walk away. These are all things that would need some facilitation. And we'll start off with some fun gross motor or whole body play activities. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. We'll come back around here to tummy time. So if you've worked with babies or have had babies yourself, you know that many of them are not big fans of being on their tummies. My boys, I have 3 boys, and all of them hated it. As soon as you put them down on their tummy, they scream and cry. They're sad, they're mad, they don't want to be there. But there are some ways that we can kind of tweak this experience, because it's such an important one, to make it a little more comfortable and fun for the baby. So first of all, remember that tummy time does not always have to be on the floor. Especially for the youngest, tiniest newborn babies, that's just not a comfortable place for them to be. It's cold, it's hard, they want to be near you. So using your body to soften the experience is a great idea. One of the things we do is trying to lie in a more reclined position, and you can rest the baby on your chest and sing or talk to him. They love being able to see your face up close like that, and then they still have all the benefits of being near your body, so the warmth and that comforting feeling of being up close to you. You can also hold baby on her tummy out in front of you on your arms, kind of like Superman style. She'll love this different vantage point, and you can carry her around so she's seeing different people and things around the room. This has been a favorite with my boys at home. Lying on your back on the floor, and then you bend your legs and place the baby on your shins face to face with you, so they're still on their tummies there. And they're right there in your face, but you can kind of move and bounce your legs and sway or rock side to side, and that has just been like my baby's happiest place for tummy time. So those are ideas for kind of using your body to soften the experience a little bit. It doesn't always have to be on the floor. Those examples still count as tummy time. The baby's still getting that experience of feeling their tummy and legs and chest on a surface, and that's the important part of tummy time there. Once they're ready to be on the floor, you can lay on the floor too, facing the baby so that she can lift her head up to see your face. You can talk and sing and make soothing sounds. We actually recommend using the big kids for this too, because babies are so interested in what the big kids are doing. So big brothers, big siblings, other kids in the classroom can come over and kind of help with that too. Even though babies should never sleep with blankets, pillows, or cushions in their beds, it's definitely okay to use these things as props for tummy time, as long as you're close by. We roll up a small towel or blanket, and you can place it under the baby's chest for extra support. You can even prop them up on one of those boppy pillows or baby cushions. You can even use regular pillows or cushions if they're firm enough. They like this because they're a little more upright. They can see the environment. You can kind of put their arms up and over the cushion so that they can still have that weight-bearing experience on their hands. And even older babies might like to try tummy time on an exercise ball. So those big therapy balls or exercise balls, as long as you're holding on and close by and being very careful, you can put baby on their tummy and kind of roll them and bounce them on the therapy ball. I think the best way to sell babies on tummy time is just really pulling out all the stops when it comes to entertainment. So favorite toys, books, rattles, musical toys are really good for getting attention and keeping them in this position a little bit longer. Okay, we can go on to rolling. So there are lots of fun ways you can support little ones as they learn how to roll as well. Some precursors to this are just positioning babies on one side during play, so letting them experience that sideline position by putting a toy next to them on the floor and kind of holding their body so that they're lying on one side and then the other. That helps get them used to that experience of being in a different position. Remember that vestibular system is coming into play there. Even just carrying babies in different positions and being kind of aware of that. Carrying them upright or with their legs tucked up or side lying on either side, even that is a great experience for them to get used to different types of movement. Rocking the baby from side to side while they're lying on the floor or on the changing table even. You can try first rocking the baby side to side from her shoulders, and then you do that same motion side to side from the legs. And that is a great way to give the baby the feel of using the different segments of her body to move. So babies use their legs to kind of kick over or their shoulders to kind of roll themselves over. And if they have that movement down because you've done it with them, they might be able to roll a little bit sooner. We also love using those foot rattles, the little toys that Velcro around the ankle. They're really good for encouraging the baby to get their feet up in the air, and that kind of gives them a little visual interest. And then once the feet are up there, they start rocking them side to side, and that's what gives them the momentum to roll to one side or the other. During tummy time, you can offer toys for the baby to reach for off to the side so that she kind of has to shift her weight onto one arm and one side of the body, and then gradually she'll kind of roll over. That first one might be kind of a doozy, but once they do it, they get a hang of it. Let's see. You can also try making a little ride for babies. This has been another favorite at our house. So we fold up a blanket or a towel and make a really nice padded surface, and then we put baby either laying down on his back or on his tummy, and we'll just pull him around on our wood floors. So there's no bumps or anything. And it's a great way for them to experience weight shifting. So they have to kind of catch themselves, and you don't pull them around too fast or anything, but just a slow little ride helps them get the feel for their balance. And then once you see that baby is comfortable with all of these movement activities, you can assist them in rolling from their tummy to their back and then their back to their tummy. So you kind of doing it with them is sort of the last step before they can do it themselves. Okay, we'll go on to the next slide. So to encourage babies to learn how to sit up on their own, there are lots of fun and easy play ideas you can try. First, just after a diaper change or even while you're just playing on the floor, you can have the baby help pull herself up to sit while holding her hands. You can sit the baby on your lap and lightly support him at the hips or hold his shoulders or his trunk, and just try bouncing both knees at once helping the baby keep his balance. Then you can try lifting one heel at a time, so he's kind of bouncing and leaning from side to side. You can sway the knees from side to side, so all different ways of providing that movement input while they're in that sitting position is a great way to prepare them for sitting themselves unsupported on the floor. Again, you can try an exercise or therapy ball here with very close hands-on supervision, of course. Stabilizing the baby at the hips, you can kind of gently bounce the ball or rock it side to side and back and forth. Again, giving them practice with those balance reactions. You can also try, before babies, if baby's not quite ready to sit yet, you can try lying on the floor on your back and first have the baby lay on your chest facing you. And then you can kind of roll gently from side to side. Again, that helps the baby get the feel of catching himself or developing those protective reactions as you shift from side to side. Once you've done that for a little while, you can move on and have the baby sitting up on your stomach facing you, and you can kind of hold his legs or hips. And again, roll side to side and have the baby kind of feel that, what that feels like to catch himself as you go back and forth. Other ideas, well, supervising baby in a sitting position, you can offer toys to her so that she has to reach for them outside of that base of support. It's another good balance challenge. And this one is a little bit strange, but it's another great way to kind of soften the experience of sitting up. We use a cardboard box or a laundry basket. We'll place a cushion in the bottom or on the sides or both and some toys for entertainment. And that way, you know, baby can be in there for several minutes at a time, and if they tip over, they're not going to bonk themselves on the floor. They have a little bit of a softer landing. You can use songs and finger play. These are great ways to keep baby's attention while they're in that sitting position so that you can kind of work up to sitting a little bit longer. And then a favorite game that we've made up ourselves here at home is the beanbag balance activity. And this has always been a favorite. Even older kids tend to like this one. I'm not sure why. It's very simple. But you just sit facing baby and place a beanbag on the child's head, or you can put one on your head to demonstrate. And then just lean your head forward to dump the beanbag off into your hands or into your lap, and then have the baby imitate. They think that's hilarious. And again, it's just another great kind of distraction technique to keep them in that sitting position for a little bit longer. Okay, we can go on to crawling activities. So once little ones become a little more comfortable and sturdy and sitting, they'll be ready to get into all fours and take off crawling. There are some really fun ways to help babies work up to this skill before they're quite there. As the child is just sort of feeling it out and learning to be on all fours, a great way to provide support is to sit on the floor and you put your legs out stretched and put a stuffed animal or another favorite toy kind of squeezed between your feet. And you can place baby on her tummy on your legs so that they're facing the toy. And then you sort of gently move your legs side to side, rocking the child or bouncing both legs together. And the baby's arms and legs will kind of be draped over your legs. So they're getting a sense of that all fours position without having to take the full weight of their bodies. It's just a good way to kind of lead up to that position. You can also use a towel or blanket as kind of a sling. So if you put the blanket or towel underneath the baby's tummy and hold both ends of it up above the baby while they're in all fours, it can be like a little sling underneath them to help support his weight. Again, it's giving him a sense of what it's like to be on his hands and knees without having to take all that heavy weight at one time. Once baby is an official crawler, there are so many fun ways to encourage this skill. They love exploring their environment and crawling all over the place. So there are fun things you can introduce to promote this. Crawling up and down a ramp or a hill or an incline is a really good idea for strengthening and for providing that sensory input. Remember, pushing and pulling and working against gravity is a really good proprioceptive sensory experience for babies. A pillow and cushion crawling obstacle course is really fun. So if you just set up a bunch of couch cushions or pillows or anything you have on hand, and you can even lead the way so that baby knows what you want them to do. They can crawl over the pillows. They'll probably pick the pillows up and put them on their head, and all of those are great movement experiences. Sometimes we'll do a crawling treasure hunt. So we place toys in a line across the floor, and help the child crawl to retrieve each one. Also, chasing a ball or any other rolling object is really fun. I know my little guy's favorite toy right now is very simple. It's just an empty coffee can, and he rolls this thing all over the house, crawls after it. He loves it. He thinks it's so funny. So the simpler the better usually when it comes to this age group. Crawling races are really fun. Babies love familiar language that prompts them about what's coming next or what to do next. So they love things like ready, set, go, and then everybody takes off crawling across the floor. That's fun for big kids to do with the babies too. We also will use ribbons to make a car wash for babies. So we'll use kind of a heavy-duty tape and tape a bunch of ribbons to the edge of the table or another opening, and then baby can kind of crawl through the ribbons like a little car wash. That's a fun little sensory experience. Crawling across bubble wrap or other textures that are taped to the floor. You can even make your own textured squares out of different craft papers and fabrics. You can kind of glue them to cardboard pieces and put them down on the floor for baby to crawl over. And then you can try that beanbag balance activity in a different way. So you can place the beanbag on the child's back and see if she can keep it there balanced while she's crawling. Chances are it won't stay there very long, but she'll think it's very funny while she tries. And last, don't be afraid of going outside. So crawling on the grass is not just really good practice with a soft landing for baby if they fall. It's also a really good sensory experience for them to go over the bumps and different gradients of the ground. To be in the grass is a different tactile sensory experience, so they're getting that good sense of touch. I think people shy away from that sometimes. They don't want baby to get dirty or they don't want to get hurt. And it's actually one of the best ways you can promote movement and exploration for babies. Okay, and we can go on to standing and walking. So just as babies get comfortable with crawling, they're like already up for the next challenge. They're ready to go. So standing and then eventually walking. They love pulling up on furniture or even on your legs, and they'll start cruising around with a little support. And then gradually they start experimenting with standing and taking their first few steps on their own too. So here are some fun ways to encourage standing and walking. Sometimes we use toys, or even if baby's a little bit reluctant to pull up to stand, we'll use off-limits things like remote control or your cell phone, things that you usually probably wouldn't give baby, but they're very enticing for a kid who's more reluctant to pull up to stand. Or just favorite toys work too. And you put them up on higher surfaces like the couch or the coffee table so that baby has to move from sitting to squatting and eventually to standing to reach for them. And once they have that down where they can get from the floor to a standing position, you can start kind of consciously thinking about where you're placing those objects, maybe along the length of the couch or along a coffee table, and that can kind of entice baby to, oh, I see something I like down there. Take one or two steps to the next thing as they move down the surface. Push toys are another great way to offer that practice with walking with a little bit of support. It's great for practicing moving one foot in front of the other and balance. This is definitely my little guy's thing right now. He has a little push cart and he is all over the place. And we let him walk outside with it quite a bit. It's his favorite thing to walk down the street on the sidewalk and wave to the neighbors and bark at the dogs. So those are a really great way to offer practice for early walkers. Coming back around to that laundry basket or cardboard box idea, you can put books or other things in it to weigh it down and let the baby use that as a little push toy. They can push it around the house, and then you can put them inside and give them a little ride, push them around for a little sensory break. Kicking a beach ball or chasing a balloon is another way to kind of entice babies to take those steps. A lot of times they'll kind of crash down on hands and knees and just want to crawl because they can get there faster. But you can hold their hands and help them get there, and they'll love chasing something that rolls. Movement songs. These are another really good way to encourage longer periods of standing. Songs like Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes, If You're Happy You Know It. You can kind of change these songs up, and instead of maybe everybody sitting down during circle time to do the songs, everybody's standing up or Some babies are standing while others are lying on their stomachs doing tummy time, and others are sitting. So just sort of think about the movement experience and how you can kind of adapt typical routine activities and songs so that they can hit a bunch of different skills. Most importantly, when it comes to standing and walking, and it's the hardest thing for us as parents and adults, is to let them fall down. So toddlers are built to fall and get back up and fall again and get back up again. And this is how they learn important life skills like perseverance, but it's also how they develop those gross motor skills. So getting themselves back up from sitting down on the floor to standing is such a good skill for them. They need it. So it's important for them to have experience. Also, we say that there's no need for shoes right off the bat. Barefoot at this age is probably the best idea for most kids. So without shoes, the muscles of the foot are allowed to develop, which increases the strength of the arch. One pediatric podiatrist says that toddlers keep their heads up more often when they're walking barefoot. So the feedback that they get from the ground means that there's less need to look down, and that puts them off balance and causes them to fall. So it's a really good experience for them to walk without shoes on so that they can get that sensory input, and then they don't need the visual part of it as much, and they can use the visual sense to help keep them upright. Okay, and we can move on to free play. We said we were going to come back to this. As I mentioned earlier, one of the most important developmental experiences for a baby is just good old-fashioned free play and exploration. We can't stress enough how important it is to give babies lots and lots of time on the floor or grass to roll or scoot and walk around on their own. As often as possible, babies should be out of their seats, carriers, and other containers so that they can feel how their bodies move. The simplest way to make this happen is just by thinking ahead a little bit and structuring the environment so that babies can explore without getting into things that are dangerous or things that will make a huge mess and make you crazy. So there are some ideas that we've done here at home to kind of quickly restructure the room or the house to give babies access to their environment and to invite them to explore. One example here at my house, we've reorganized our low kitchen cabinets and drawers to fill them with baby-friendly kitchen items. So instead of locking up all the cabinets, I just sort of reorganized, and now one of my little guy's favorite places to play is a low cabinet that's full of plastic water bottles and water bottle tops and kids' plastic cups. So there's nothing in there that he can break. And even if he dumps everything out, it's a pretty quick and easy cleanup, and he just loves, that's his favorite thing to do, is dump out all the cups and roll them around on the floor, pretend to drink out of them. Another favorite is a low drawer that's full of kitchen towels and bibs and cloth napkins. I just simply switched out, I had other kitchen items in that drawer, and I switched them out for these softer, more baby-friendly things. And now that drawer is just another place for him to explore and throw towels all over the place. He plays peekaboo by draping the napkins over his head, and again, it's super easy to clean up. Also, if you have the luxury of extra storage, you can empty out the cabinet under the kitchen sink or another cabinet completely and let baby use it as his own personal hideout. This was my oldest son's little trick. He loved playing under the sink, so we ended up just emptying the whole thing out, and it was like his little secret hiding place. You can even take the doors off the cabinet and make sure that, obviously, baby is always supervised, and ensure that the cabinets can't lock or become wedged shut. So letting baby explore and have a little free reign totally doesn't have to mean that you're making a huge mess of your room or your house, or that you have to be on him every second and so concerned for his safety. If you have a little supervision, it can be just a matter of some easy rearranging and restructuring too. Okay, we can go on to fine motor activities. So I also thought, in addition to some of the whole body movement activities, it would be fun to talk about some fine motor activities. As an occupational therapist, these are a lot of the activities that I do with kids in our therapy sessions. So I felt tempted to include them here. Most babies will grab and hold on to pretty much anything that they can get their hands on, like hair and earrings. That's what we're going through right now here. There are a lot of simple activities you can try that can help them put these skills to use. So Grasping, pushing, and pulling activities are great for building strength in the fingers and hands. Some ideas that you can do with babies are to help them put wooden blocks into an opening cut in the top of a coffee can or other container. Musical instruments are great here too. They're also great for sensory experience. You can buy them in a set or you can make your own. Drums are a favorite. Just a Tupperware container with a top on it is easy enough. You can put something inside that container and make it into a shaker. Other grasping activities, you can put Velcro on toys or blocks so that they have to be pulled apart. Also those big Duplo interlocking blocks or bristle blocks, if you put a set of those together in a tower and have the baby pull them apart, that's a great fine motor activity. Let's see. Having the baby placing blocks or objects into a muffin tin or even an empty egg carton. You can put, blocks or other toys in there and have the baby pull them out, pinch them and pull them out of the container. That's a great grasping activity. Painting with water is a fun way to have them practice holding on to a utensil. We just use clean paintbrushes because we know everything's going to go right into their mouth. And then they can paint the table or the floor with water or the sidewalk or the side of the house. Another activity is tying a bunch of fabric strips together, and you can put them in an empty tissue box or a wipes container and then have them pull out the long string of fabric. They love that because it seems like it goes on forever and they can keep pulling and pulling and pulling. You can put other objects into the tissue box and wipes container too. They like to put things in and dump things out. Playing with water bottles and the tops of water bottles and kind of pretending to put them together. They probably won't be able to get them together on their own at this age, but they like to kind of do what you're doing, put the top on the Tupperware, put the top on the water bottle and kind of imitate that. Stirring and pretending to stir with wooden spoons and bowls and pans is a fun activity too. And one of the primary fine motor activities at this age is dumping and throwing. So don't be surprised if all of these things turn out with the supplies thrown all over the floor. That's just part of the experience, and they love that cause and effect games and activities. So just consider this part of the journey. And then you can change things up too and help the baby by cleaning up whatever toys he has dumped and then slowly count to 3 and let him dump it out all over again. That's a great cause and effect activity. And you can even see if he'll start putting the objects into the container or handing them to you while you clean them up. That's a great precursor to teaching him how to clean up. More fine motor activities to encourage reach. You can set up a tower and have the baby knock it down. We do this with plastic cups or shoe boxes or those cardboard building blocks. Rolling things across the floor, like I said, a ball, a water bottle, a cup. You can try rolling them down the ramp. It's a great visual tracking experience for babies where they have to kind of watch the object go by. Setting toys on surfaces of different heights. Again, it's working on that coordination from getting from sitting to squatting to standing. Tying a toy to a string and then gently swinging it near the baby to see if he can grab for it. This is an awesome hand-eye coordination activity and visual tracking activity. Obviously, be sure you take the string off the toy when you're done, but during that play experience, it's really good for babies to kind of try to coordinate that movement of watching the toy go by and having to grab for it. Okay, and we'll go into some sensory activities. So if you remember back to the beginning, we talked about the sensory systems and how sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste are only 5 of the 7 senses. So very often, if you search online or on Pinterest for sensory activities for babies, you'll find things that are pretty much only geared toward the sense of touch, like finger painting, Play-Doh, and sometimes they'll make these things like edible Play-Doh or edible finger painting. And those things are great, but they are, only one example of the sensory systems that we want to touch on with babies. So keep in mind that all of the awesome movement and exploration activities we've talked about are really, they're not just gross motor activities or fine motor activities, they're actually sensory activities too. So here are a few good options for sensory play that can target all of those sensory systems. Water play is awesome here, obviously with very close supervision. It's an awesome tactile experience or touch experience for babies. So standing them up at a water table, sitting them in a tub or sink, or even putting them in a little baby pool, those are all really fun ways to play with the water. Rocking and swaying activities are soothing and calming, and again, that's touching on that vestibular sensory system. So my little guy loves sitting on my lap. I'll sit kind of in a crisscross applesauce position with him on my lap, and I'll rock down to my back and then use my legs to kick back up to a sitting position and kind of roll him up and down. That's a great movement experience. Playing in a ball pit is a really fun activity that provides touch input, proprioceptive input, and great vestibular input as well. Imitating faces and other movements and positions while looking in a mirror is really fun and usually very funny visual activity. Touching books and other objects that have different textures is a great way for babies to explore the sense of touch. Swinging is a really awesome way to stimulate the vestibular system too, and this can often be very calming and soothing for a cranky or tired baby. Baby wearing, this is an interesting one to talk about for our caregivers. Usually moms and dads are the ones wearing the babies, but there's no reason that caregivers and child care providers can't do the same thing. Baby wearing is a really awesome all-over sensory experience for little ones. Those pack or wrap style carriers provide all kinds of sensory input. The baby feels every movement that you make while you're walking or cleaning up or doing the dishes or anything. They can hear the soothing sound of your voice because they're right up close to you. They experience the warmth of your body and all over tactile input. And then the carrier against your body gives them a nice little proprioceptive squeeze too. So that's just kind of like the grand finale of sensory experiences there. Babies love light play. You can play with flashlights or just let the baby turn the lights in the room on and off with the switch. You can even incorporate movement here by having everybody else in the room dance or move and then freeze as soon as the lights go off. Bath time and lotion is a really nice soothing touch experience for babies. They love the water play, and then a little massage with some lotion afterward is a great way to provide that calming touch input, you know, before nap time or bedtime. Sensory bottles are a really fun thing for kids of all ages. We discovered that our baby loves watching water slosh back and forth in a half-empty water bottle. I was on an airplane once and had half a water bottle left, and he was getting cranky, and that's what kept him entertained for the rest of the flight. So you can actually search all around on Pinterest or on the internet and find lots of creative ideas for filling empty water bottles with different liquids to make it different colors and even other materials to float around in there. And you just make sure you glue or tape the top on really tight, and babies love watching the stuff move around inside the bottle. Okay, so we can go on to the next slide. So those are some of my favorite gross motor, fine motor, and sensory baby play ideas. And they're all great for promoting healthy physical development, but there are tons more ideas out there. And these are some resources we put together that are really good places to find fun and creative ideas for playing with babies and kids of all ages. And all of the resources we've included here are books and websites or blogs written by pediatric therapists like ourselves. So they're all very trustworthy resources where you can find a lot of great information and more play activities like the ones that we talked about today. So we'll go on to our last slide, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me today, and I hope I was able to provide some good information about physical development in babies, along with some fun new play ideas that you can try with the babies you work with or the babies at home. And if you're looking for more information about child development or fun activities for babies and kids of all ages, come and check us out at theinspiredtreehouse.com. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Claire. That was great. I've got a few questions that our audience may be interested in hearing your response to.
Okay.
The first one is, so how do you handle a situation where you may have 5, 6 babies with 1 or 2 childcare providers, how can you provide quality movement experiences when you have so many babies to look after?
Yes, that is an excellent question, and it's something that comes up too, excuse me, that comes up for us as therapists as well. In the school-based setting, we have so many kids on our caseloads that we almost always end up working with small groups instead of one-on-one, and that's definitely intensified when you're dealing with this younger baby population, because it's harder to be hands-on with every kiddo in your group when they're this age. So I think incorporating activities where it's appropriate for a group to kind of all play together. And actually, I think most of the physical movement-based activities are great for this, where you roll a ball across the room and everybody crawls after it together, or you have a crawling obstacle course and everybody's kind of doing it as a group. I almost think that these movement play activities lend themselves actually better to a group of babies than even in a one-on-one environment. And they will tend to feed off of each other. So if you can get 1 or 2 into the activity and crawling across the pillow obstacle course, chances are everybody else is going to chase along or follow along. I think some of the trick is if you have babies that are at different developmental stages, that's where you have to get really creative and kind of take one activity and adapt it so that all of them can play together. And so it's just a matter of kind of trial and error and picking something that can be used in different ways. So if you have that coffee can and some kids are chasing after it, you can roll it across the room for them. Some kids might just be drumming on it when it's their turn. Some kids you might put a block in it and they might hold it and shake it. Some kids might be crawling after it. So it just sort of, I think it's creativity and, figuring out a way to use the same materials in different ways for different kids.
Thank you. The next question I have relates to, and you made a mention of it when you said that these young babies need kind of the chance to fall, and they will fall and they'll get up. But we hear a lot about safety and risk, and how do we balance the safety risk issues with the challenge and opportunity issues?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question, and I think structured activities like the ones we talked about today offer a little bit of a benefit here because you can kind of do some turn taking. I think when you're doing, I don't know, say they're learning to walk and they're chasing after an object or going through an obstacle course, if you kind of have kids going one at a time, you can kind of be closer by to supervise them going through that activity instead of having everybody sort of sprawled out doing their own thing. Settings like a playground or an outdoor space can be challenging, I think, because you even if you have all hands on deck, you can't account for what every baby's going to do and go in a different direction. And I think that also kind of structuring the play space so that you can be sure that the setting is a safe one for babies and toddlers to explore is also really a huge thing. And it's also just sort of peace of mind and an easier, more relaxed caregiving experience, I think, when you're in a place where the baby can be free to crawl around, walk around, and explore. So certainly carpeted surfaces, grassy surfaces are going to be lend themselves a little bit better to falling and getting used to walking than the hardwood floors. So it's just sort of thinking ahead and structuring and planning ahead.
So it's a balance too of, taking a little risk and having a little bit of challenge so that you can have some success and some, build these kind of movement memories almost.
Exactly right. And I think we definitely see kids who aren't given that opportunity to fall and get back up. And if they don't have that chance to do that, they don't develop those protective responses where they reach out and catch themselves with their hands. Or, we see it in older kids all the time who aren't given the opportunities to explore. And these are kids who have broken arms all the time and who are falling a lot because they don't have that same natural sense of boundaries of what are my limits and what can I do, what shouldn't I do, just from having had that experience before.
That's great. Now, in kind of the same category, we encourage our child care providers and our parents to take their infants and toddlers outside as much as possible. You know, connect with nature, but we also have those same kind of concerns about eating mulch or, you know, chewing on sticks, or, you know, what's another suggestion that you might have about getting infants outside in nature more often?
I think even just activities like going for a walk in a stroller, and I know we said keeping them out of containers and out of carriers as much as possible, but being outside and moving, and even if they're in a stroller or in a carrier that you're wearing on your body, kind of keeps them close and safe, and it allows for great opportunities for language development. You can be pointing things out to them that they see, and you know, my little guy is into birds and dogs, so that's what we do. We go out on our walk and he points to things and makes the animal sound, and I think there are lots of fun ways to be outside that really aren't as risky, and even the most simple activities, even just crawling around in the grass, is they're getting the feel of their wind on their skin. They're getting the sound of the birds and the airplane going by and the car horn. They're getting the feel of the grass. So it doesn't have to be very complicated, and it doesn't have to be a real orchestrated event. Just being out there and sitting outside for lunch is an awesome sensory experience for little ones this age.
Awesome. So transitioning to another question related to seats and carriers, if you have to be in a seat or a carrier, even for a little bit of a time, what are some things that can be beneficial, or some suggestions for teachers and parents that could provide them with the best opportunity while they're in a seat or a carrier?
That is such a good question, and I think for me as a mom, the things that I have found helpful, if I have to go and take a shower, I have to do the dishes, and my little guy loves being in the dishwasher. He can't get enough of it. So if I have to have him in a space, we have a foldable little play yard. It's a soft, lightweight thing, and it still affords him some movement. He can pull up to stand in there. He can crawl around in there. He has his toys in there. We don't leave him in it for extended periods of time. We're very conscious about that. But it still allows him to scoot around and access his things and explore in a more limited way. So I think that's a great suggestion. I also find that a high chair or like booster seat type situation allows them the chance to do some fine motor play. So if they need to be seated at the table and they have to be buckled in, you know, that's a great opportunity for them to do some of the fine motor or sensory activities. Painting with a wet paintbrush is a great thing here. That can keep them entertained while you're fixing lunch, and then they're kind of in a stable, secure place, but they're still getting some exploration and movement and motor play too. I think those are great ways. And actually on my resources page, the first blog I think that's listed there is called Can Do Kiddo. And that is by a therapist named Rachel Coley, and she has some great resources on there that go more specifically into different types of carriers and toys. And she's a pediatric OT. She specializes in the infant and toddler population. And so those, if you wanted to look into advice on a specific stroller or a specific seats, she has a lot of information there.
Very good. Now, what about maybe some of your favorite loose parts or equipment that can really stimulate movement in babies, or, you know, get their senses excited?
Yeah, definitely. One thing, we actually just wrote out a huge list. We've been talking about our favorite therapy things, and then I'm like, why don't we just write a post about this and put these all in one list? One of our favorite, kind of newer within the last few years, toys is called Squigs. It's S-Q-U-I-G-Z. And you can get them on Amazon or toy stores. And they are little suction cup toys. And we have found them, Lauren, my partner Lauren and I, we have found them to be so much fun and so useful for all ages and all motor skills. You can stick them down on the floor. It's like a pretty strong suction cup. You can stick them down on the floor and have the babies pull them off. And they're big enough that they don't go and they're not a choking hazard. They're big. And they can pull them off the ground. We have kids who are older and walking. We put them on the stairs, so they have to walk up the stairs and pull them off. We put them on walls, so they have to pull them off of that surface and work a totally different set of muscles. We even put them on marker boards and have kids draw paths around them, kind of like a little maze. There are a million ways you can use them. We put them on the floor to make a maze for our cars to drive through or for a ball to roll through. That's a really fun toy. It sounds kind of boring, but good old-fashioned building blocks are such an important part of play on a lot of levels. The cognitive skills, there are early math skills going on there, and just building and knocking down is a simple and easy activity that is great for babies this age. The cause and effect, the eye-hand coordination, grasping skills going on there. You can also use them in more of a gross motor way and knock down, build a tower and have them crawl to it and knock it down, or have them roll to it and roll into it and knock it down. We also use scooter boards quite a bit, and usually you'll see these in gym or phys ed classes, but those square or rectangular scooter boards that have 4 wheels, they are an awesome tool for movement activities for little ones, probably a little older than the babies that we're talking about in this presentation today, but for 1-year-olds and up, it's a really fun way to get some movement in. And again, there's a ton of ways you can pretend that they're Superman and cruise them across the floor on their tummies. They can sit on them with you, and that's great for practicing balance and those protective responses that we talked about as they're learning how to sit. So scooter boards are another big favorite of ours. I'm trying to think what other great things. We use balls of all sizes for different activities. You can make bowling games. Again, just chasing after them is a fun and easy activity. Target practice, where they have to throw the ball into a container or knock something down or kick something down by kicking the ball at it. Those are all great activities. I could keep going on and on.
These are great. These are great.
Those are some of our very favorites. I'm sure there are more that I'm missing off the top of my head here.
Well, and the last thing to send our audience away with is, what, if you had one thing, one suggestion to give to a child care provider, a teacher, or a parent to really help ensure that the babies that they have in their care are really moving towards their developmental milestones or motor milestones, and they're really getting the appropriate physical activity opportunities, what's that one suggestion you can give to them?
Well, that's a great question. I think my answer would kind of go along with what happened to me, as I was a therapist for many years and then became a mom, and it changed the way I looked at working with the kids I was working with, and it definitely made me appreciate the individuality of each kid. And I think that's what I would say here as much as possible. And it's hard, I know, because you're busy and you're swamped and it's loud and you're trying to put out, juggle all the kids at one time. But as much as it's possible to tune in and really look closely at the differences between the kids and what is the unique thing that does it for this one kid. What gets him excited? What gets him more willing to participate? Or is he more of an observer and a quiet watcher before he jumps right in? And I think looking closely at those nuances and the individual characteristics of the kids really helps you tap in to the activities and the way to present the activities that will work best for each child. So I think that would probably be my one takeaway.
Excellent. And Claire, I can't thank you so much. This has been a wonderful webinar, and we look forward to hearing you at the toddler webinar.
Great. I'm excited to be back. Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm going to pass you over to Evie to just close us out of the webinar, and we'll be talking with you soon.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for taking part in our webinar today. We hope you enjoyed it. And we'll be sending out this information. It'll be shared on our website, and we'll be following up with an email to each one of you guys. And in that email, it'll have our contact information and also the contact information for the great staff at the Inspired Treehouse. So feel free to reach out to us. And if you have any other questions, please send them our way.